141 Allied soldiers gave their lives to restore the legitimate government of Kuwait. The leaders of the international coalition were Western democracies, acting to defend the principle of self-determination. Now that Kuwait has been liberated, what sort of government can it look forward to? The ruling Al-Sabah family weren't what you'd call a great example of democracy in action. Jerry Timmins reports on the growing pressures on the Al-Sabahs to allow ordinary Kuwaitis a greater say in government.
Joy and relief sweep through a liberated Kuwait city. At home and abroad, Kuwaitis celebrate the end of Iraqi occupation. But amidst the jubilation, there are concerns about the future and what kind of government Kuwait can look forward to. Every day since the invasion, exiled Kuwaitis have been meeting in London at Diwaniyas, a traditional way to exchange news and discuss politics. The news that martial law will be imposed in Kuwait is high on the agenda for debate. The Kuwaiti troops, who are today hailed as liberators, may soon have the task of enforcing martial law, which the government says will last for 3 months. Even before liberation, Kuwaitis at this meeting were so concerned that they invited a lawyer to explain what martial law means.
The people who implement this law have the right to carry arms and the right to search people at any time, day or night. And they control the papers and can close down the printing companies.
Well, I'm petrified actually, because martial laws normally gives an absolute power, subsidizing and freezing all authorities, legal, legislatory authorities, and give an absolute authority to normally a military man.
We would like, to see the democratic life is introduced once again. And that is in our Constitution of 1962. That is why we are scared.
Kuwait, 1940. For generations, Kuwaitis lived a traditional life under the rule of an emir, always chosen from the Al-Sabah family. Over the past 50 years, the changes that have taken place in Kuwait have been dramatic. Although modern Kuwait was never a full democracy before the invasion, it had set the pace for political change in the Gulf. Since the 1960s, it had been making a serious effort to marry the extensive powers of the emir with an elected assembly. This commitment to a more liberal system of government was enshrined in a written constitution in 1962.
It's a surprise coming from a country with no constitutional history before that. It provides for religious freedom, freedom of the press, personal liberty, the freedom to assemble without interference from the police. It provides for the rule of law and for an independent judiciary. But it also makes sure that the executive is in the hands of the Amir and of the ruling family. They appoint the ministers. These ministers are to be subject to the scrutiny of the National Assembly, but that didn't always work out in practice.
In fact, the Emir suspended the National Assembly twice, in 1976 and 1986. In the 70s, during the Lebanese Civil War, Kuwait feared its large Palestinian population might threaten national security. And in the 1980s, during the Iran-Iraq War, the Ayatollah called on Kuwaiti Shias to rise up against their government. Jassim Khatami has dedicated his political life to fighting for the full implementation of the constitution. He says the emir and his government should reward the loyalty shown by the opposition during the invasion with democratic reform.
Saddam Hussein tried to find one man from the opposition to help him or to cooperate with him, and he found none. So they are proud of that. So why don't give the Kuwaitis their rights and give them the parliament and give them this freedom?
Kuwait's Minister of Planning, Suleiman Matawa, is in London planning his country's reconstruction. He promises an eventual return to the '62 constitution and an elected assembly.
The only difference now is really in the priorities. And I can tell you, if we were to have a plebiscite tomorrow or the day after, the majority of the Kuwaitis will say, please let us go back to Kuwait, and then, plus the fact that democracy has no expiry date on it at all. Democracy is a good thing. Democracy will prevail in Kuwait, and we would like to have more and more of it. There should be no fear whatsoever.
So you will give a cast iron guarantee that there will be a democratically elected National Assembly in Kuwait after the war?
This is what the Prime Minister said, and he is the head of the government. I'm only reflecting his views and ideas.
But will all Kuwaitis be allowed to play a full part in the new Kuwait? Before August the 2nd, only a tiny fraction of Kuwaitis had the vote. Out of a total population of 1.7 million, about 70% were classified as foreign nationals, with no voting rights at all. The remainder were Kuwaiti citizens, who were divided into two groups. The so-called second-class citizens and all Kuwaiti women were also denied the vote. They formed about a quarter of the total population. First-class citizens made up the rest. These were Kuwaitis whose families were registered as citizens in 1920. Only this tiny minority, representing about 4% of the population, had the right to vote. Mustafa Abbas is a second-class Kuwaiti because his grandfather made a mistake when filling in the registration form in 1920. He was on holiday at a resort in Morecambe when the invasion took place.
We would like to demolish the first-class and second-class Kuwaiti immediately, and it should be announced now, even during the invasion, by the Emir of Kuwait. Second, I would like to see everybody has the right to vote, because the country is belong to everybody, is not belong to a single family or a single party or a single man or a single idea. It's belong to all the Kuwaiti. Women should have vote immediately and should become a candidate for the parliament as well.
This will have to be determined, by the assembly itself, or it may require an introduction of a new clause. I wouldn't rule out changes in the future, because what we have been through is a traumatic experience. And if we are going to go back to the Kuwait of 1st of August, God help us.
That pre-August the 1st Kuwait was in many ways the most advanced country in the Gulf. Its welfare state provided housing, healthcare and education virtually free. Life was so comfortable, in fact, that there was little incentive for some Kuwaitis to become active in business or politics.
We may have been a little bit the product of the welfare state by relying on others and saying, okay, I can sleep in the afternoon and let John or Abdullah or Smith, Mr. Smith do it, and this will have to change.
The change the minister describes is already being debated here at the Kuwait Investment Office in London. The KIO, as it's known, invests Kuwait's wealth around the world, and behind these doors there's a power struggle going on. Recently, a dozen young Kuwaiti technocrats said they were resigning, amidst allegations that the ruling Al Sabahs had too much control over how business decisions were made. KIO is famously secretive and hasn't granted Newsnight an interview. Its accounts are not available to either public or parliamentary scrutiny. This is how the Al Sabah family dominates the Kuwait Investment Office. The Emir effectively controls all appointments to the boards of the Kuwait Investment Authority, which was set up to monitor KIO's activities, and to the Kuwait Investment Office. The chairman of the boards of both these organizations is the finance minister, Sheikh Ali Al Khalifa Al Sabah. The man who runs the KIO in London is another family member, Farhad Al Sabah. Below him, the general manager's post is vacant, but the deputy general manager is Khaled Al Sabah. Any change in the way in which the Emir controls such appointments would greatly reduce his powers.
The struggle in the KIO is essentially one over accountability. There are some professional and technical problems. There has been a relatively low rate of return. There is also the question of whether the Kuwait investments should be going to countries abroad or whether more money should be invested within Kuwait itself. But to a large extent it also mirrors the political struggle outside. The Al Sabahs in effect control the Kuwait Investment Organization simply because they are the executive of Kuwait by and large. It is their nominees that run it.
Moves to reduce the emir's powers and put an end to patronage were already underway before the invasion. Demonstrations like this one 18 months ago, demanding the return of an elected assembly, attracted widespread support. The government might have been about to respond. But now, after the invasion, there's a feeling that such demonstrations were mistaken for weakness by neighbouring countries.
I think some of the frustration that the Iraqi regime had was the fact that Kuwait was a free country and he mistook this freedom for an upheaval against the Al-Sabah family.
But are you determined to pursue the democratic path in spite of those dangers?
I think once you're on that road, you can't really begin to look around and say, except when there is a real danger, and it will have to be agreed amongst the Kuwaitis that, excuse the expression, we have to change gear. Otherwise, we would like to go the route of democracy.
And if that change of gear is necessary, are you determined to see it take place through the democratically elected National Assembly?
Yes, yes.
If the Emir agrees with his Minister of Planning that the elected assembly should be the highest form of authority in the land, then the Kuwait of the future will be an example of democracy which less liberal governments in the Middle East may not appreciate. The Kuwaiti opposition now looks to the West to press the Emir to choose the democratic path.